Greetings, brothers and sisters. We are traveling. I am at the airport at the moment, as you can see behind me there. I wanted to, while I'm waiting for my next flight, I wanted to bring something to your attention, which would be part 3 of Ted Wilson exposing himself after he came out with that video and revealing indeed that he is one of the board members of ADRA, which has been a discussion for a while among Seventh Adventists, especially whenever I talk about Ted Wilson and link him with ADRA. There's always some Seventh Adventists saying, nope, Ted Wilson has nothing to do with ADRA. Well, in the video, again, if you did not see it, watch it for yourself. He exposed himself. He said he is a member of ADRA. And also, because Trump, you have to remember what happened there, what led to this whole issue. It was because Donald Trump, we are told here, says billions have been stolen at USAID and other agencies. This could be the biggest scandal of them all. Democrats can't hide. And one of the members of USAID, or I should say, those that have been receiving money from USAID are nonprofits that have been making billions off the border crisis, which they also call the NGOs, as you can see in the green words. They have been getting money from USAID, which Trump has said they have stolen money, and this could be the biggest scandal of them all. And one of those agencies, NGOs, that have been receiving billions of dollars from USAID is ADRA. ADRA is an NGO under the United Nations. This is just by way of review. We've covered some of that before. And it was confirmed here by Fulcrum 7 back in January 2025, that the SDA Church was named on TV for helping facilitate mass illegal immigration. And that was one of the subject here. Nonprofits are making billions off the border crisis. The amount of taxpayer money they are getting is obscene. I don't want to read the whole thing. We read this before. And again, NGOs, ADRA, they were making billions and billions of dollars from the government. We are told here in Signs of the Times, February 27, 1896, the world's Redeemer had come from his royal courts, stepped down from his royal throne, had clothed his divinity with humanity. In his mission on earth among men, he had displayed the same power as he had displayed in delivering the nation from Egyptian bondage. But it was the fact that he did not exercise his power in bringing to them temporal benefits in the way, listen, in the way they desired, that led the scribes, the religious leaders, and the Pharisees to reject the world's Redeemer. He bore a message. He there, that is Jesus Christ. He bore a message denouncing, notice the word denouncing, every abomination in the land. Jesus exposed their hypocrisies and revealed the fact that their sanctity was only a cloak to iniquity. Now we are told here clearly, contrary to what many are saying, just preach Jesus Christ, just preach love, stop exposing the conference. Well, we are told here that Jesus denouncing every abomination in the land, and he also exposed the religious leaders' hypocrisies. The same way, John the Baptist denounced their abomination and also exposed their abomination. It is a mandate from God to do the same thing in these last days. Isaiah 58 verse 1 tells us to cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression and the house of Israel their sin. It is a mandate by God. As a matter of fact, we are told again in Ezekiel 9, for those who do such thing, expose the abomination expose the hypocrisies of the religious leaders, the corrupt organization, the General Conference, will receive the seal of God. That's Ezekiel chapter 9, verse 4. Now, as I mentioned, Elder Wilson exposed himself in that video. He exposed himself by not only confirming for us that he is one of the board members of ADRA, but he also stated that, yes, we have been getting money from the government, which is an abomination, which is creating the image of the beast. And then he showed that his love for money as well. Let me go back to the clip. Listen.
Dear brothers and sisters in Christ, for over 40 years, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, known as ADRA, has been a beacon of hope to vulnerable populations around the world. It was established by the Seventh-day Adventist Church as its humanitarian arm. ADRA's mission has always been clear: to serve humanity so all may live as God intended. Throughout these decades, ADRA has reached millions. Serve all people with dignity. My dear father, Neil C. Wilson, was part of the church leadership that helped establish ADRA the way it is today. Its mission grew out of the willingness to seek and be a partnership with other denominations, philanthropic organizations, development banks, and government agencies that share our concerns with whom we may cooperate in meeting human need, as is stated in the ADRA bylaws and voted by the Executive Committee of the Seventh-day Adventist Church at its 1983 Annual Council. At this time, as we continue to face unprecedented challenges around the globe, ADRA finds itself confronting an urgent financial situation. The temporary freeze in the United States government funding, particularly from the organization called USAID, has created a gap that impacts its ability, ADRA's ability, to sustain critical programs.
Well, brothers and sisters, I wonder where God is. Elder Wilson just told us here clearly with his own mouth that he has been in partnership, in bed with the government, which based on the Bible, we are not supposed to do so. And if this is not proof enough that Elder Wilson is indeed a Jesuit, as we have shown you, I don't know what else you want to see. I've shown you clearly, and it is well documented, that Ted Wilson is or has been trained by the Jesuit. While Ted Wilson is making this appeal to Seventh Adventists to donate to help ADRA because USAID, Donald Trump, cut off the funding. Who else is appealing to their congregation to donate as well? Notice, urgent. Help Jesuit programs in crisis due to USAID suspension. The pause in U.S. foreign aid funding will impact Jesuit education, healthcare, and livelihood programs around the world. Now, this is from the American Jesuits International. It goes on to say, listen, this pause will disrupt critical programs in communities across the globe, including those led by our Jesuit partners, for at least 90 days. Essential services like education, healthcare, and livelihood support will be at risk. As we face this unprecedented suspension of foreign aid, I am reminded of, listen again, Jesus' call to serve those most in need and the promise that our acts of generosity will return in abundance. Wow. So you have Ted Wilson, ADRA, the General Conference, are begging for money because they can no longer receive the funds from the government. And you have the Jesuits saying the same thing as well. Fast forward now to ADRA's website. It says, Ted Wilson, president of the Seventh Adventist World Church, expresses support for ADRA amid USAID funding pause. Listen. President Ted Wilson, president of the Seventh Adventist Church, has expressed his unwavering support for the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, ADRA, in the face of temporary freeze in U.S. government funding, particularly from USAID, which has created significant challenges for the organization. Elder Wilson, who is also a member of the ADRA board, is calling on church members, donors, and communities worldwide to continue their vital support of ADRA's life-saving mission during this critical time. So there you have it one more time. Elder Wilson is one of the members within the Board of Trustees of ADRA. Keep that in mind. We'll come back to that. Now, ADRA went on to say, the Adventist Church president acknowledged the urgent financial gap caused by the USAID funding pause, which affects ADRA's ability to sustain critical programs. So God cannot sustain it. It's the government that can only sustain ADRA. However, he emphasized that ADRA's work continues despite this setback. Elder Wilson further called on the global church to unite to support ADRA's work. Adventist Church President Wilson also reminded the church that, listen now, ADRA work rooted in the teachings of Jesus Christ, citing Matthew 25:35, where Jesus calls for compassion toward strangers. That sounds familiar. Now, at the top, I have the Jesuit website where we just quoted this passage above, and below we have what we just read here from ADRA about Ted Wilson. Notice the same appeal. Notice the same Jesuitism appeal, appealing to your senses, to your emotion, to get you to donate. Again, the Jesuit at the top, they say, as we face this unprecedented suspension of foreign aid, I'm reminded of Jesus. There's the appeal. Jesus is called to serve those most in need, and the promise that our acts of generosity will return in abundance. And then ADRA and Ted Wilson says something very similar. Adventist Church President Wilson also reminded the church that ADRA's work is rooted in the teachings of Jesus Christ. The same thing the Jesuits said above, citing Matthew 25:35, where Jesus calls for compassion towards strangers. Brothers and sisters, this is not by accident that you are seeing the same thing the Jesuits have said after Trump cut off funding, and the way they are appealing to their congregants to give money. You see the same appeal that is being made by ADRA and Ted Wilson. Who's learning from whom? Well, Ted Wilson, he's a Jesuit trained. I'm giving you more evidences after evidences. One more time, ADRA and Ted Wilson, they said clearly that Ted Wilson, let me go back to it, right there, highlighted in blue, Elder Wilson is also a member of the ADRA board. Do you know what that means? When they tell you that Elder Wilson is also a member on ADRA board, that means every abominable things ADRA has been promoting, Elder Wilson has been the one promoting them. For example, it's all about control, the elite plan for the Great Food Reset, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and other NGOs. Keep in mind, ADRA is one of the NGOs. Would have us believe so. These institutions are controlled by the global elite who aim to create monopolistic markets for themselves and enslave people, turning them first into captive consumers without choice and eventually without free will. So United Nations, World Economic Forum, Rockefeller, Bill and Melinda Gates, they all are involved in this along with the NGO. Again, on the screen here, this is from the United website NGO branch. Yellow arrow is pointing at the General Conference. It is listed General Conference as one of the NGOs. Let's move on. There is the General Conference here. Ted Wilson and ADRA was admitted at the COP 2028 as an NGO within the United Nations Climate Change Action. Next on the screen, ADRA Canada's DI advisor champions gender equality and climate action. ADRA, which is little more than an NGO subsidiary of the United Nations, has their own DI officer, which means diversity, inclusion, and equity. She recently attended the 2023 Women Deliver Conference in Wanda. So ADRA has been promoting homosexuality, climate change, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals agenda, excuse me, and Elder Wilson is on board with it. There's the ADRA website back in November 2024. Global ADRA statement: as a global humanitarian organization dedicated to serving the most vulnerable, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency calls upon the presidency of COP29 and all parties to recognize and strengthen the essential role of humanitarian actors in climate action, prioritize climate finance and include food, that's bugs and all of those things, and nutrition security in climate negotiation. Again, we see the same papist agenda ADRA has been promoting. Next, ADRA, this is from the General Conference website. ADRA celebrates United Nations Day by emphasizing its global mission. The Adventist Development Agency, Relief Agency, joins worldwide communities to commemorate United Nations Day. I don't want to continue to read all that. You get the point. My point is, since now we have another confirmation that Elder Wilson is a board member of ADRA. So that means Elder Wilson has been promoting all these abominable things, which is calling for the depopulation of the masses, as it says here. So the United Nations and its co-conspirators have manufactured a food crisis, including the NGOs, by linking it to their order fabrication and exaggerating climate crisis. They are using it to reset the world's food system. Their plan to transition to net zero nature positive food systems by 2030 translates into a war on traditional farmers unable to absorb the added cost of new regulations and control. Small independent producers are being squeezed out of farming. So there you have it. Who's on board with this? The General Conference. There you have it. Again, the dangers of climate change. Despite the clear risk, government appears slow to act. The world membership of the Seventh Adventist Church requests, I did not request that the government concerned take steps necessary to avert the danger. And what are some of the steps they are doing here? They are orchestrating famine, making your life more miserable, new regulation and controls. And then one more time to back this up, ADRA, that's from their website, remains committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. That's the United Nations agenda, diabolical agenda, as the United Nations gathers to launch the Sustainable Development Goals for the next 15 years. The Adventist Development, ADRA, affirms its commitment to our partnership with the United Nations and the new global goals for 2030. We remain as committed as ever to integrate the principles of sustainable development to help meet the global goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are the path for achieving a better future, not Jesus, but partnering with the United Nations, Bill Gates, and WEF. That's the path to a better future, according to ADRA and Ted Wilson, for families around the world. Together with other humanitarian agencies, governments, and communities, ADRA's offices around the world will continue to promote and implement projects that will help meet the global goals by 2030. No three angels messages. Let's continue. Next one. That's part of the goal, and ADRA is on board with it. 33 years ago, the United Nations called for global depopulation of 100 million people annually. In 1991, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization published a controversial text calling for extreme global depopulation. I don't want to continue to read all of that, but you see it. We've shared this to you before. The point that I'm trying to make here, based on Ted Wilson's admission that he is one of the members of ADRA, and based on his now hunger for money, and based on him exposing himself that he's been taking billions of dollars from the government, that means Elder Wilson is a criminal, he's a Jesuit, he's a socialist, he's a globalist. That's the truth, brothers and sisters. And there is another proof of that. They partnered with the United Nations World Homicide Organization, which is a body within the United Nations. They said we collaborate with them, we cooperate with them because they are a credible body aiming to quote unquote improve your global health. Oh, brothers and sisters, Spirit of prophecy tells us the work of apostasy begins in some secret rebellion of the heart against the requirements of God's law. Unholy desires, unholy ambitions. Yes, we have been seeing this. Are cherished and indulged, and unbelief and darkness separate the soul from God. If we do not overcome these evils, they will overcome us. So there you have it. If you remain under this, because by beholding you become changed, it will overcome you. We have to sigh in Christ, separate ourselves from the organization. That's what makes us really Seventh Adventists. By separating ourselves from the corruption, we show that we have the spirit of Protestantism. Let's continue. If we do not overcome these evils, they will overcome us. Those who listen to the suggestion of Satan and swerve from their integrity begin the downward path, and some masterful temptation hastens them on in the way of apostasy till their descent is marked and rapid. Sins that were once most repugnant become attractive and are welcomed and practiced by those who have cast off the fear of God and their allegiance to his law. But the most pleasurable beginning to transgression will end in misery, degradation, and ruin. So they have cast off the fear of God. What's our message? Third angel's message. First angel's message. Fear God and give him glory. For the hour of his judgment is come. Worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the fountains of waters. Third angel's message says, if any man worship the beast and his image, the same shall drink of the wrath of God. So we have to show that we have the fear of God at this moment. They have no fear of God. But the true remnant is described this way. They keep the commandments of God, and they have the faith of Jesus, the righteousness of Jesus, the faith of Jesus, and the fear of God. So there you have it once again, brothers and sisters. We have given you more proof that Ted Wilson is one of those Jesuits. He has made it official. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.